Only last Friday, Con Constantine was giving his Jets the thumbs up following their first win of the season. Today, he got the thumbs down from Football Federation Australia.
The FFA board has determined, after a series of meetings with the club and its current owner, that the club did not have the ability to meet the club's short or long-term financial obligations and has therefore decided to withdraw the licence from the current owner.
Constantine claims he didn't know about the change of ownership until this afternoon and quickly took aim at FFA chairman Frank Lowy.
It could have been a man and come out and said, OK, Mr. Constantine, regardless what's going to happen, at least give me the benefit of doubt and ring my CEO and say, listen, this is happening, that's happening. But he didn't do it.
The Jets have endured tense times of late, embroiled in a bitter battle with the Knights over lease payments for Energy Australia Stadium and with players and staff going unpaid for 2 weeks. Constantine always maintained that was a short-term issue and a loan from the Federation would help. Today, struggling to hold back tears, he alleged it was always Lowy's intention to get him out and put local mogul Nathan Tinkler in.
He said, I'll look after you with a Western Sydney club. I said, I'm not interested. I'm not interested in going to Western Sydney or anywhere else.
Constantine also claims Lowy and the Federation have dropped the ball when it comes to the A-League.
I believe every club in the A-League at the moment is suffering badly. And for some unknown reason, all the money is going to the Socceroos and the A-League is suffering.
The Jets players must now ignore the upheaval when they take on the Gold Coast at Skilled Park tonight. Their former owner, meanwhile, has offered some parting advice for the new man on the block.
He loves his horses and good luck to him. Horses don't talk back where the players do.
Mitchell Hughes, NBN News.
This is just a fraction of what Newcastle Police seized during early morning raids in Charlestown, New Lambton and Warners Bay. Drug unit officers say it's 3.5 kilograms of amphetamine along with ecstasy tablets and 7.5 kilograms of marijuana and more than $120,000 in cash.
That amount of money seized, that amount of drug off the street, we certainly like to think we'd put a dent in local supply and certainly supply in some of the other regional areas.
4 people, including 2 brothers, have been charged following the raids, with a 20-year-old Charlestown man accused of more than 50 offences.
Since June 2010, police from Newcastle City Drug Unit have been conducting strike force Branbury. We've been investigating what has proven to be a significant drug supply network working from Sydney to Newcastle to areas of the Hunter region, Bathurst and Tamworth.
Police say in the past 3 months alone, the alleged drug ring has distributed more than $1 million worth of illegal substances.
We will allege they were behaving as people that were quite comfortable with what they were doing. The network's very organised. There are also some offences that are linked in relation to at least one home invasion.
4 men are due to face court tomorrow. Madeline Bond, NBN News.
Supported by their employer 4Jacks, more than 100 workers were given leave to take part in this afternoon's union rally. This ship HMAS Success is at the centre of the action. The federal government is currently considering a bid by a Singaporean firm to add a second skin to the vessel's hull. That's undercut a local bid and could affect jobs at the Carrington site.
Clearly we want to get a message to the decision makers that in considering that decision, they shouldn't just be focusing on the cheapest option.
According to the union, the contract would sustain 200 jobs over 6 months in Sydney and Newcastle, where steel panels for the hull would be fabricated. The AMWU's National Secretary Dave Oliver says if Australia outsources defence maintenance to another country, it will threaten jobs here. He's calling on the government to reject the Singapore bid, and today's rally was timely.
The recommendations will come to the Minister, I'd say within the next week or two.
Only on Monday, the federal government was showing off the efforts of 150 4Jacks workers on the new customs vessel Ocean Protector. Newcastle MP Sharon Grierson was unable to comment on the issue today, while the Defence Department didn't respond to our request. Jane Goldsmith, NBN News.
$850 head of cattle went under the hammer at the Singleton sale yards this morning, and for the first time in years, the stock fetched some healthy prices.
About 12 months ago, what we call the casino vealers were making sort of from 140 to 160 on a very good day. Today they made up to a bit over 220 cents, which is a good rise in the 12 months. But bear in mind, we did get 220 cents 20 years ago.
Rainfall in the state's west and southeast Queensland, as well as a surplus of feed and a cattle shortage, are behind the bolstered prices.
It's been a long, hard struggle with the droughts and prices, not only cattle but grain also. You know, the grain market's not that strong. The shining light's lambs at the moment, it's tremendous.
Agents say more cattle are expected to come onto the market after the long weekend, with demand for new stock continuing to grow.
We've lost so much country to coal mining and subdivision, but the western areas that have had the good season, they're all looking to increase their numbers with the prices increasing the way they have.
Madeline Bond, NBN News.
This was New South Wales a year ago tomorrow, shrouded in red dust. The amber haze reduced visibility to just a few hundred metres and rendered our world in sepia tone. The dust particle count was 10 times more than anything on record, posing a real health risk.
People with asthma and long-term respiratory conditions are finding it very difficult to breathe under the conditions, and we're advising them to stay inside.
This was the Newcastle obelisk on that dusty day. Today, blue skies. Nearby Bar Beach was a blur. Normally, it's picture perfect. The The rare storm, which swept across New South Wales and southern Queensland, stripped valuable topsoil from farms. It was then carried by gale force winds. 1 year on, it's also quite a different story out west, now mostly lush and green.
Those dust storms came from the extended dry period throughout South Australia, Victoria and southern New South Wales. All of those areas have now had extensive rain.
After a decade of devastating drought which turned the countryside into a giant dust bowl, the good drenching means that less than 5% of New South Wales is now officially in drought. So there's no chance of a repeat of that spectacular dust storm anytime soon. However, it will be talked about for years to come. Jane Goldsmith, NBN News.
This is just an initiative from our teachers within our support unit that felt that the children needed to just experience a fun day, just have an enjoyable time of what everybody else does. So it's all about equality and inclusion.
It's been a tense few weeks for players and staff, but today provided some certainty.
It's obviously been up in the air for 4 weeks or so now, and to have something secure until at least the end of the season, it's a good feeling, and I'm sure the boys will show it on the park tonight.
Still, there was a sense of sadness for the man who has poured millions into the Jets.
He's a very passionate guy, and hopefully we can keep him involved in the club somehow, and he still turns up to the games, and we can still perform for him, because obviously he was the one that got the club lifted off the ground to start with.
Constantine has always been a one-man show, and no one celebrated harder when the Jets won the title in 2008. Even as late as last night, he had devised a plan to cut his ownership to 51%.
Selling shares in the club to the community. I think he was saying up to 49% to the community to allow them to partake in the club's future.
Nathan Tinkler's deal runs until the end of the season. In a statement released today, he says he has no desire to own a football club, but wants to provide a nursery for the development of the game in the Hunter. The Federation will begin working with Nathan immediately to broaden the club's supporter base and engage the business community. But if the mining magnate walks away, would Constantine consider returning?
Not while Frank Lowy, the FA board are there. No way in the world. Autonomy's got to be bought. The club's got to run their own show.
Mitchell Hughes, NBN News.
I hope it would lead me into more skating with Disney on Ice or working with Disneyland. That would be really great. I'd really like to do that.
Bushwalkers discovered 33-year-old Stephen Quire's body almost a month after he went missing. Strikeforce Beamish was established to investigate his death. And this afternoon, police swooped on 2 homes in Waratah and Maitland, where they arrested 2 women aged 31 and 26.
The 2 people that have been charged with the murder of Mr Quire are known to Mr Quire, both females.
Earlier this month, police made a public appeal for anyone with information about Mr Quire's murder to come forward. Today's arrests came 15 days later.
It's been a long investigation, but we have gathered a lot of evidence over that time.
An autopsy revealed Mr Quire died from a single shotgun wound to the chest.
That weapon hasn't been located, but we're still making inquiries in relation to the weapon that was used.
Both women have been remanded in custody and are due to appear in Newcastle Local Court tomorrow. Madeline Bond, NBN News.
He's reluctant to put himself in the spotlight, and Nathan Tinkler is already making plans to put the Jets' fate back in the hands of fans in the Hunter and northern New South Wales. Local football legend Ray Bartz believes an initiative such as kids under 12 attending games for free would help re-engage the community.
They can't just rest on their laurels. They've got to, look where maybe Com went wrong and look to where, we can improve on the things and get out and get a lot more community involvement and make sure the kids are going to the game and dragging their parents along.
The Jets' interim chairman Ken Edwards spoke to players and staff today to assure them their jobs are safe. Meanwhile, the club's headquarters will be moving from the store building on Hunter Street to a new location at Honeysuckle on Monday. At the Knights, CEO Steve Burriston wasn't surprised the mining magnate stepped in. His involvement means the ongoing fight over the use of Energy Australia Stadium could end quickly. And considering Tinkler already provides plenty of financial support to the NRL team, the prospect of 2 clubs becoming one company isn't off the radar.
We haven't had any formal discussions along that line, and any form of privatisation or different modelling would have to firstly be approved by the board and then by the members, but it's not out of the question.
Renewed corporate interest in the Jets will be just as vital as fan support.
I'm sure that Nathan Tinkler is already tapping a number of large companies, and the business community is prepared to listen to what he's got to say.
Business heads say the fact the Jets play a national sport, which also has links to the Asia-Pacific region, offers maximum exposure.
Look, we've seen through the Knights brand how their links in with businesses like Coal & Allied and NBN have increased their brand awareness. The Jets are a national franchise.
Mitchell Hughes, NBN News.
It was once a hive of activity employing more than 10,000 people. Now it's 150 hectares of empty land. But it's well on its way to being transformed. 30 of the most contaminated hectares have already been cleaned up. Now Hunter construction firm Darracon has won a $5.9 million contract to remediate another 2 parcels of the site, 5 hectares at the eastern end and another 10 to the west.
What we'll do after that is remediate the remaining portside land, about 37 hectares, and then Buildev, who have the development rights on what we call intertrade, will remediate the remaining 62 hectares.
BHP is cleaning up the river at the moment, which is expected to take the best part of a year, and within 2 years the entire site will be ready for port and industrial use.
It's hard to put a figure on how many jobs will be here, but if you think about this site at its peak had nearly 12,000 employees, it's not too hard to imagine that that sort of activity can come back to the region. It's setting up for the future, and I think it augurs well for the region.
Trucks are expected to be on site for the later stage of the remediation within 3 weeks, with work expected to be complete by February 2011. Kate Mitchell, NBN News.
So we wanted to do a couple of things. Make the information more appropriate and accessible, make it easy, and make it a click away.
The Jets went into the clash knowing their future was secure, while the Gold Coast was suffering through the longest home goal drought in NSL and A-League history. Early on, both sides looked tentative, Gold Coast the first to make the highlight reel. Only 2,091 spectators turned up and they had to wait 35 minutes for the Jets' first attempt. Lubo Milicevic tried to provide inspiration early in the second half. Minutes later, another chance went begging as Nikolai Topor-Stanley and Ruben Zadkovic combined from a free kick. Zadkovic was full of running and he finally forced a save out of keeper Glenn Moss. He was at it again a minute later. This time he should have done better. In the end, the Jets were left to curse missed opportunities as former Manchester United defender John Curtis made them pay. For the Jets, it was a bitter late blow.
Yeah, I think what's happened over the last month is behind us. I mean, that's no excuse for the loss tonight.
Mitchell Hughes, NBN News.
Gareth Robbs is certainly making his mark in the Hunter's hospitality industry. The 21-year-old budding chef has just been named the New South Wales Apprentice of the Year. His love of food was fostered early on.
Got into cooking from a young age. I used to spend a lot of time at Grandma's house, so she sort of started the passion of cooking. She had a veggie garden, so I was always up there picking beans, picking carrots and helping prepare dinners.
These days, he's cooking up culinary triumphs at Bistro Molyneux, and he enjoys every aspect of his job.
Most rewarding thing, especially working in an open kitchen like here, is to see the smile on people's faces when the meals get put down in front of them.
While diners clearly appreciate his fare, Gareth's boss is perhaps his biggest fan, claiming the young apprentice won the award all on his own.
I think his natural talent is naturally his. You know, I don't personally want to take the credit for this because he happened to be with us as a great team.
That talent is something Gareth plans to build his livelihood on.
Definitely the dream in the next 5 years, plan on being in the planning stages to open my own establishment in the Hunter area.
Madeline Bond, NBN News.
In 1971 there was 250 cases of VAT-47 and produced in Australia totally, which was here at Tyrrell's. And now as a region, I think as an industry, I think we produce about 40 million cases. So to know that it all started from here and I'm a part of it, it's very proud.
Stephen Quire's family gathered at Newcastle Local Court as proceedings began against the two women charged with murdering the 33-year-old. The Rutherford man's body was discovered buried in a shallow grave in the Wattican Mountains back in March after he went missing in late February. Mr. Quire's mother was today full of emotion.
At this stage, the family is still very distraught and still grieving, and we want total justice for my son.
The accused are Mr. Quire's partner of 11 years and mother of his children, 31-year-old Renee Burns, along with 26-year-old Tanya Lane, who Burns allegedly had a relationship with. Both women were charged with murder late yesterday. An autopsy revealed Mr. Quire died from a single shotgun blast to the chest. When appearing before the court, Lane protested her innocence, mouthing to Mr Quire's family, "I haven't done anything wrong." Burns didn't appear before Magistrate Elaine Truscott, instead staying in the docks. Mr Quire's family is glad to see the case in court.
I want to say a special thank you to the homicide detectives who have worked really, really hard for the last, just over 6 months of actually doing the case.
The two women were refused bail and are due to reappear in court on the 10th of November. Madeline Bond, NBN News.
Newcastle at its best, but activists believe this priceless view is at risk from gas drilling. Perth-based company Advent Energy wants to look for natural gas 55 kilometres east of Newcastle.
They're not required to consult with the communities concerned. They're not required to call for submissions. And it's very worrying that all this is conducted under the radar of the general public.
The group, Hands Off Our Coast, is calling on the state and federal governments to put a moratorium on exploratory drilling until proper environmental assessments are carried out.
This technology isn't proven safe yet. It's not safe in terms of the marine environment, and we can't risk our precious coastlines.
I've worked in the oil industry. I've seen lots of rigs offshore in different places, and I'd actually hate to see them offshore off our coast in Newcastle.
But a company spokesperson says the technology is safe as it's been tested in more than 1,400 locations around Australia. Advent is expected to be given approval to start drilling within a month. Energy experts say if large gas reserves are found off the New South Wales coast, prices for households could well fall. Kate Mitchell, NBN News.
Buildings along Hunter Street have become an embarrassment for Newcastle, but the Lord Mayor claims a planning adjustment to allow people to live on ground floors would make a big difference. All it needs is state government approval.
Instead of having empty commercial and office space there, that will revitalise the city. I've talked about short-term, bite-sized development, and that's one of the things that I think could be done. You could have that up and running within 12 months.
Visitors to the Hunter Business Chamber Forum also concluded there needs to be a one-stop shop for development approvals.
Look, it's very clear that there needs to be one voice speaking on behalf of Newcastle.
It didn't dominate discussions, but the removal of the rail line is obviously a priority.
The rail line in its current format can't stay. And I mean, the member for Newcastle has said that on many occasions and said it again before our forum this morning.
Getting a Newcastle University campus in the city is now viewed as the catalyst for revitalisation. Business leaders are calling on the federal government to help with costs.
Let's get behind the university coming into the city, and it's going to be driven by population, and they're right on the doorstep, let's bring population back into the city.
Meanwhile, the Lord Mayor wants council to begin planning for the demolition of its building on the corner of Hunter and Auckland Streets. The structure was gutted by fire in July last year. Mitchell Hughes, NBN News.
The old Royal Newcastle Hospital is now a distant memory, with the apartments along the beach almost complete. The public piazza linking Pacific Street and Shortland Esplanade is the newest addition and features the Nautilus sculpture. The shell design reflects the seaside location, and these pictures show how the 5.5 metre tall, half-a-tonne piece of art was installed.
It's part of the community space, so the public can access and view that sculpture now from Shortland Esplanade.
The apartments are some of Newcastle's most sought-after real estate, and it's not hard to see why. Uninterrupted views of Newcastle Beach.
The apartments have been very popular. We now only have a few 2-3 bedroom apartments remaining and a couple of magnificent penthouses.
But they're not exactly cheap. 2-bedroom units start from $695,000, and for a 3-bedroom like this one, you'll need to part with at least $995,000. Developer Mirvac has furnished some of the apartments to help paint a picture for potential buyers.
A lot of people downsize from their homes in Newcastle and go into apartment living, and it gives them an idea of how they can put furniture in that takes advantage of the space and the views.
Kate Mitchell, NBN News.
I will miss coming to work, but it's the comrades that I have here that I will even miss more.
"48 hours into the club's new era, and it's been busy both on and off field. As players prepared for their third game in 8 days, staff packed up personal effects from the Jets office located in former owner Con Constantine's store building. They've been forced to leave behind computers and other equipment, but are ready to start again.
We've taken what we can in terms of what we need and we've moved on.
The focus now is on hosting Melbourne tomorrow night, but player unavailability is the issue. And the news isn't good for captain Michael Bridges.
He's been diagnosed with a chip in his cartilage, so he'll be out, I don't know, God knows, could be anywhere from 5 to 6 weeks or longer.
Ben Kantarowski's departure with the young Socceroos and the list of other injuries have thinned out playing stocks, but not the resolve.
It's for everyone to stick up their hand and take some responsibility and get stuck in as well.
That's just what the coach wants to hear.
We're at home, and the players that will be given the opportunity need to stand up.
As for the midweek transition in ownership, Kalina says that issue is no longer an excuse for players who will be held accountable for their performance.
We have to be totally honest with each other and say, hey, we could have done better, and I'll be demanding better.
Jim Callanan, NBN News. Life isn't all about football for Adam McDougall, but he wants it to remain his day job for at least one more season.
Definitely going to play next year, and as I said, the club's been great to me, and this is where I want to finish my career. And I do appreciate the support of the fans have been great, and they keep telling me to keep playing, so I can't argue with the fans.
He got few arguments today while visiting Ronald McDonald House. It's just that elusive signature on a Knights contract that remains.
I'm confident, and it's a great club, and I'd love to stay here. And my first priority is to do that, and that's where I want to finish my career is here. So.
Meanwhile, there's another cowboy on his way to town. Steve Southern will join the Red and Blue next year, and they want him to bring this along too.
He's the sort of player that the Knights have built themselves on. Tough, tenacious, and a real good tackler, and he's a real competitor.
The Knights will soon break for the off-season, but they'll remain close to these kids who are facing far more important challenges.
We have some bad days on the footy field, but nothing in comparison to what some of these people have gone through. So it's great to give back.
Meanwhile, Kurt Gidley has been named the Excalibur Club Player of the Year. Jim Callanan, NBN News.
Whipping winds weren't enough to keep beachgoers away from the sand and surf today. For the first time since April, the boys and girls in red and gold were out in force, keeping an eagle eye on swimmers.
Yeah, it's an exciting day. It's a beautiful day in the sun, and I'm pleased to say no rescues today, so that's really good news for the bathing public.
Clubbies are already issuing swimming safety advice after 314 drowning deaths in Australian waterways between July 2009 and June 2010. That was the highest number in the past 7 years.
Bathe between the flags. That's the biggest thing that people can remember, because there are rips on every beach, and the lifesavers and the lifeguards put the flags in the safest places to swim.
Up to 10 volunteer lifesavers will patrol any one of the region's beaches from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. on weekends. And while the season's only just begun, clubbies are already predicting a bumper year for their membership numbers.
It should be a very strong year. We've got a record number of nippers and lots of people coming through doing their bronze medallion, so it should be a very strong year for nobbies.
Madeline Bond, NBN News.
It brings back the memories, and you've got to remember Newcastle BHP helped build this great country that we live in today.
As coach and athlete, Andrew and Christy Dawes make a great team, but as husband and wife, they'll soon enjoy their best result yet.
We are having little boys, so that's very exciting. Dozzy says he'll be the next Manly halfback over my dead body.
Due in February, it also means the world 10-kilometre title holder will miss the Delhi Commonwealth Games. But given the news, that's fine by her.
I guess I just thought it would be better to get knocked up rather than potentially blown up, so why not?
As for a return to competition, London 2012 has been pencilled in.
It's definitely something to aim for at this stage, but when the baby comes along, you just don't know.
I can't see her giving up easily, and
no way.
That's why I'm lapping up now, because I think it's going to be fairly full on, next year.
Natasha Van Eldik leaves for India tomorrow as the youngest ever Australian lawn bowler to compete at the Games, and the 19-year-old can't wait. As for the team conditions and those security concerns, the teenager has confidence they're in good hands.
It's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, and you're not going to chuck it away just because of something that the television is saying. So until we get over there, realise what it's really like, we're not going to know.
I'm gonna burn my couch in the backyard on Friday.
Starting to get your weird back, sis.
I have no idea.
To be rewarded. To lose yourself in the moment. A new free TV channel in crystal clear high definition has arrived. Welcome to Jam.
It began at daybreak. Risking life and limb, climate change activists scaled coal-loading equipment.
This morning, global warming activists have staged an emergency intervention into Australia's largest contribution to climate change, namely coal exports.
9 locked onto equipment at various coal facilities, while 33 issued a call to action from the top of a large coal pile,
effectively halting all operations in the world's largest coal port.
The aim of the stunt?
We're calling on the Gillard government to stop ignoring Australia's #1 contribution to climate change and to place an immediate moratorium on the expansion of the coal industry.
The protest has just finished peacefully more than 6 hours after it began. Police will now sort through who will be issued with court attendance notices and who will be fined. Protesters were escorted off sites and their details recorded. Has it been worth it?
Most definitely. If any attention that's brought to the climate chaos that's going to be coming upon us all is most definitely worth it.
The stunt saw teams of police from Newcastle and Lake Macquarie taken off the road.
And that obviously diminishes our ability to respond to calls for service in the community normally. I just wonder what type of message is trying to be sent.
Madeline Bond, NBN News.
Not is it only unsightly, but the rubbish is also really dangerous to marine life. So quite often we'll have a dive and we'll see fish caught up in plastic.
A quick dip and a good stretch after a long week for the Jets, which included 3 games and a change of ownership. Players can now enjoy a good break before their next game.
Irrespective of what anyone says, it's taken its toll on us the last month or so, both on and off the park.
Things began well last night. An encouraging crowd of 8,652 came through the gates, and most of those were happy new owner Nathan Tinkler ensured they still had a club to support. Ruben Zadkovic almost provided the perfect welcome present. Only the crossbar was good enough to stop it. Ben Kennedy did the job yet again for the Jets, his 4th clean sheet of the season, confirming his status as the club's genuine #1 shot stopper.
First time I played, I was pretty much there just because there's no one else. So I feel I've earned my spot now, and I think that's showing in my performances.
It's the lack of finishing up front which remains a concern, but a meeting between new Executive Chairman Ken Edwards and Coach Branko Kalina tomorrow could go a long way to changing that, with the player transfer window opening in less than a week. Already there are suggestions former star Joel Griffiths could return from China on a loan deal as management begins the process of ensuring long-term success.
I only live like 20 minutes from here, so it's my home track, and I feel really good on it, and hopefully I can come away with a win.
Anybody that's actually participated in the sport and raced the motorbike knows how hard it is just to do one day's worth of racing, let alone 7.
Having witnessed yesterday's meltdown on the news last night, many of today's Virgin Blue customers at Newcastle Airport were expecting the worst, but most seemed content to endure a wait of a couple of hours.
What can you do? Computers do computers, don't they? So can't do much about it.
I've got the laptop, got the movies, I can watch that, kill time, read a book. Yep. That's all you can do.
About 500 passengers were delayed by up to 5 hours yesterday, and one flight was cancelled, making today's problems seem relatively minor.
All the flights are scheduled to arrive, but they are running between about 1.5 and 2 hours late at this stage, mainly because they're having trouble getting the backlog of passengers out of the other ports, which is today will be Melbourne and Brisbane.
Meantime, there were no delays at the Norfolk Air check-in. Direct flights between Newcastle and Norfolk Island resumed today. The Norfolk Air 737 will visit Newcastle each Monday. Paul Lobb, NBN News.
This security camera footage captured the thieves' every move. At 6:30 last night, the two men arrived at the Wangi IGA's loading dock, entering the supermarket through an unlocked back door. They head straight to an office and, after finding it empty, wait in ambush for a store manager to arrive. Minutes later, they have their man and, after threatening him with a carving knife and crowbar, force him to open a safe.
The victim was not injured. But that was more a result of good luck as opposed to good management. It is a major concern when they're using such dangerous weapons to commit these sorts of offences.
The managers shoved under a table and the thieves load thousands of dollars into a backpack, all the while disguised by their hoodies, one bearing a distinctive white logo and cloth covering their faces.
But it appears to be well planned, and they've certainly got some familiarity with the location itself.
Lake Macquarie detectives want to hear from anyone who saw the men arriving or leaving the scene. Madeline Bond, NBN News.
More than 40 members of the climate change protest group Rising Tide were arrested yesterday. Some climbed onto the loaders and hung precariously by ropes, while others staged a sit-in. None of the activists was injured, but NBN News has learnt that workers in charge of the loader were traumatised by an incident that could have seen the protest end badly. We've been told that while the protesters were on the loader, the machinery actually restarted, and it was only the very quick thinking of operators who managed to shut it off just in time.
And we pressed the emergency stop buttons. A worker restarted that machine and we simply called out and then they stopped it again.
The protest disrupted the loading of 4 ships. Rising Tide members say taking risks is the price of having their message heard.
The risk that we place ourselves in, we feel is justified and outweighed by the extreme risk of climate change.
Paul Lobb, NBN News.
In the job less than a week, and Jets Executive Chairman Ken Edwards is moving from meeting to meeting, but already likes what he's seen and heard. The reaction of Jets fans to the change in ownership wasn't missed either.
Anywhere in the world to see a community react so positively to what's going on, and Nathan's noticed that and obviously is delighted that there is a high level of community engagement.
It's crucial if the mining magnate plans to extend his current commitment past this season, and he's doing his bit to ensure that happens.
He's already made it very clear. He wants this to be a professionally run club that has a board of directors and a professional management.
But given Nathan Tinkler's love for League and the Newcastle Knights, combining the two sporting codes is a distinct possibility.
There is obviously some synergies between getting both franchises together and running them as one Newcastle, one great Newcastle super club.
There remains more pressing issues, however. The club has just secured new premises and should be in by early next week, while additions to the playing roster is up for discussion tonight. Jim Callanan, NBN News.
These Krav Maga students are learning to defend themselves against glassing attacks.
What we found lately is that there's been a large number of these incidents happening in the Newcastle area. Some of our students came up with some concerns. We said, let's put a seminar on. That's what we've got going on now.
According to the New South Wales Bureau of Crime Statistics, the number of glassings have decreased from 997 in 2008 to 902 last year. But students say the crime's still far too prevalent and have a real fear of falling victim to it.
We always hear of someone it's happened to, and it's if the situation ever arises, you just know how to deal with it, and hopefully it never happens.
Mastering these basic manoeuvres can apparently make all the difference.
What we're looking at is just the common idea that persons raising the weapon, attacking towards the face. We're looking at them engaging, finishing the problem and moving away.
And the moves can be adapted to deal with a range of circumstances, from escaping gang attacks to defence against weapons. Skills author Matthew Thompson says he may need when conducting research for his next book.
I'm going to Russia soon to mix with the underworld there, and I need to know how to defend myself, and Krav Maga seems to be the best way.
Madeline Bond, NBN News.
Injury and player unavailability have combined to stymie the Jets' attack so far this season, and the club's new management remains open to fixing that.
I'm aware today in the media there's some discussions about the Griffiths brothers, and that's a consideration, but there are others, many others as well, have been put on the table over the last few days.
The October transfer window looks to have come just at the right time.
I'd like to think that the club will be an active player in the transfer market, but it depends on what's available and what it costs.
The current squad heads back to work midweek, knowing their next game isn't for more than 2 weeks, but the coach is keen to use that time wisely.
How important is now that we use the break to recharge the batteries and rediscover some of the self-belief and confidence that we had going into the season.
Although falling below their short-term aspirations, the players feel time and experience is on their side, considering their run last season, which took them from last place on the ladder through to the semi-finals.
Well, we're only, I think, 5 points off second. Anywhere in the world, if you said that to a team, you know, you're a third of the way into the season, you're 5 points off second. It's good. You know, we're in a good position. It doesn't look great when you're sitting ninth, but it's actually not that bad.
There's no words in explaining the loss that everyone's feeling in the pits right now, but you know, we're just going to push on, go racing and ride dirt bikes. That's what we're here to do, that's what everyone wants to do, and that's what Ian would have loved us to do as well.
So much competition, there's probably 15, 20 riders that could win, you know, so there's a lot of competition and it's really tough out there, but go out there and see what we can do.
These Army cadets have stumbled across a car crash and are administering first aid to the injured occupants. While this battalion has been deployed to patrol an island, they're among the exercises cadets will complete during their week-long field camp.
It really gives them an opportunity to put all their skills that they've learnt and practiced throughout the year to good use.
The camp is mostly about developing self-confidence and leadership skills.
The main things we learn here are the leadership, taking orders, giving orders.
But around 30% of these keen youngsters will go on to join the Defence Forces.
We've got a lot of cadets who join because they've got an interest in the military.
Most of the activities are run by the cadets themselves, and today a new batch was given the tools to lead.
They're going to go back to their home units and hopefully they'll implement what they've learnt and it'll improve their training programs.
And while it might sound serious, we're assured it's mostly just fun and games.
At this stage, the heat's probably the toughest. Hopefully, they say it's going to rain the rest or later in the week, so that might cool things down. But then it could add a new dimension. Someone might slip racing back to the car and miss the 10-second mark.